Hey guys, Fitness Science with another video. Today, more a practical side of view on how to lose weight. My previous video, which was part one of this series, was more about the physiological pathways involved with weight loss. Today, I want to speak about how you practically do it in real life. So I'd say, based on the physiology of what's happening in our body, there are about 5 main points that you need to consider when you're trying to lose body weight. If you don't understand some of the chemical pathways that I mentioned here, please consider looking at part 1 of my video where I go through all that in much greater detail. But for now, the practical tips. The first step is to ensure that you're in some sort of caloric deficit or fasting state to ensure that the hormonal processes of fat loss are turned on. Hormone-sensitive lipase is a hormone that's turned on in response to stress like adrenaline and norepinephrine production. And this only really happens when we're in a fasted state. So the reality is, to lose weight, for some period of the day, we need to be in a fasting state or at least some sort of caloric deficit to ensure weight loss. This is pretty simple and is pretty self-explanatory, but to do this in person, we need to track our macros, so what we're eating day to day. There are many apps to do this. One of the most popular are things like MyFitnessPal, where you can add all your food in and track your macros. But the idea is that your body has a set number of calories it needs to burn through to keep you alive, and this varies between person to person. This is just a baseline level to keep you alive, literally to keep your heart beating and your brain functioning. Now, add on top your activity level, so some people will be more active during their job and everyday life than others. You basically multiply your resting metabolic rate by your activity level to get a baseline number of calories that your body will burn through a day. The idea behind this number of calories is that basically this number, if you ate this every single day, you wouldn't gain nor you wouldn't lose much weight. You would just stay neutral. If you want to lose weight, you need to be eating under this amount. You're probably not going to get it from an online calculator straight off the bat. It will take some experimentation to get the actual level. But once you've got that level, you can pretty much manipulate your numbers in order to lose weight from there. If we just look at one here, this is one example of a macro calculator. There are many out there. This is just one example. But what you do, you add in your age, say you're 20 and you weigh 180 pounds and you're 6'1". You can then basically choose your activity level here and then how many days a week you exercise and how many minutes per week of that exercise you're doing. And then you can calculate your total daily energy expenditure. This is your basal metabolic rate, which is basically the amount that your body needs just to keep you alive. And then it's this times your activity factor, which gets you your total daily energy expenditure. So that's saying to just maintain weight, it would require about 2,500 calories a day, not to lose, not to gain. To then lose weight, you can subtract from that. So it's just a simple numbers game from there. So a good starting point might be 2,300 calories a day and see how you go. Point number 2 is setting your numbers to ensure that you continue this caloric deficit over the time span where you want to lose the weight. When you found your total calories, this is just a total number, but it doesn't actually split it down into protein, carbs, and fats. There should be a heavy focus on protein for 2 reasons. Firstly, protein keeps you very satiated and generally stops your insulin spiking, which can cause hunger crashes on the way down. But also, protein is involved in muscle protein synthesis, which is a key pathway in our body for laying down new muscle mass. We know that muscle is a lot more metabolically active than fat, and I believe that people shouldn't just be targeting weight loss, we should actually be targeting body composition changes. We should be trying to add muscle to our frame. This was a study done a number of years ago that looked at each of the major organs in the body, as well as tissues, and analyzed just how metabolically active they were. They actually found, as you can see here, that skeletal muscle is 13 versus adipose tissue, which is 4.5, saying that skeletal muscle is almost 3 times as metabolically active as adipose tissue or our fat. Basically what this means is if you target body composition changes where you can try and add skeletal muscle to your frame and gain more muscle, your body actually becomes more efficient at burning energy and your basal metabolic rate will actually be higher, basically meaning that you can eat more and get away with it if you have the skeletal muscle there because it's more metabolically active. Now, for just some baseline numbers to set your actual macro targets of protein, carbs, and fats, a really good table is this one here, which basically outlines the amount of calories, protein, carbs, and fats that you need to reach your goals. So say, for example, you're a female aiming for fat loss, you should really be targeting about 1.5 grams per pound of protein. You should be targeting about 0.9 grams per pound of carbohydrates and about 0.35 grams per pound of fat. Now, of course, you can change this up and you should be changing this up. This is only a guideline. You're going to have to probably change the numbers based on if you're not losing weight, you should be bringing some of the numbers down. starting mainly with fats and carbs, and then keep the protein high if you can. Fats and carbs don't necessarily make you fat, but the biochemical pathway is that carbohydrates can be turned into triglycerides and stored in adipose tissue if the conditions are present in that there is too much glucose in the body and your energy demands are not so high that you can actually burn through all of it. Then it will be stored as fat, and free fatty acids can enter the adipose tissue itself and be stored as fat as well. Now, both of these pathways are basically only turned on if there is an excess of calories that the body doesn't need, and then it will start to store it as fat for later use. This is the importance of keeping yourself in a deficit when you're trying to lose weight, in that the body will start to burn through its natural fat stores as opposed to the food that you actually eat. And in terms of making adjustments to the numbers, say you're eating about 200 grams of protein, maybe around like 300 grams of carbs and around 90 grams of fat for an example. I'm not a huge fan of making enormous adjustments to it week to week. I'm more of a fan of maybe dropping 10 grams of carbs per week and seeing how the weight loss goes. If that's still not enough, you can maybe take 3 to 4 grams of fat per week and just keep dropping it incrementally down, rather than just taking a huge blanket like 1,000 calories out immediately. That will leave you with a lot of problems in terms of hunger and just a huge change that your body won't be used to. I really like the idea of doing it in small incremental steps. Your body adjusts to that level, and then you just take away a little bit more if your body is not keeping up to the weight loss that you want. Say, for example, you just take away 10 grams of carbs. And I think these small adjustments are better than the big sweeping changes that can leave your body very hungry. Also, in terms of muscle protein synthesis, we know that resistance training is a huge stimulus for this. So it would be recommended to train resistance training if you're not already about 2 to 3 times per week using big compound lifts as well as accessory work. I'll probably go into this in a later video in terms of practical programming for different populations. But overall, resistance training is actually recommended for type 2 diabetes patients for the very effect that it has as a result of laying down new muscle on your frame, which is actually really metabolically efficient and burns through calories like absolute crazy. The third point is knowing that our body shifts fuel utilization based on the exercise that we're doing. So basically, as our exercise intensity increases, our body actually uses more carbohydrates as a fuel source, and they start to dominate. When you keep around mid-intensity level, like 50 to 55% VO2 max levels, fats actually start to dominate as the primary fuel source in the body. So for cardio-based work, low intensity steady state for longer durations is actually better for fat loss than high intensity interval training. Now, of course, the high intensity interval training has its own use, but if you're purely trying to target fat loss, then keep around that low intensity for longer durations, like a low intensity walk, swim, bike ride. Anything like this will increase the fat burning capacity more than killing yourself in a high intensity state. The fourth most important point is to track your progress every 2 to 3 days, but don't get obsessed with the numbers. It doesn't matter if there are fluctuations between weigh-ins. All that matters is that the average trend is downwards. And if you follow these steps, I'm 99% confident that there should be no reason that you can't lose weight unless you have some underlying pathology, which would be incredibly rare. But if you follow these steps, you should see a downwards trend in your weight, especially if you're tracking macros and following the guidelines in terms of protein, carbs, and fat breakdown, as well as exercising in a fat burning range. There should be no reason why you can't drop weight very easily. So don't get obsessed with the numbers. It would be a good idea to track your numbers in an Excel spreadsheet where you can start to extrapolate numbers and actually graph it. What I like to do is keep a overall log of my weight in my Excel spreadsheet, and then you can track the numbers based on that and see that the average is trending downwards. The fifth and final point is to be wary of cheat days. What can happen with cheat days is you have a really good week up until Saturday or Sunday, and then you let yourself go on the Sunday or Saturday, and you may not think it's actually a problem, but if you look at the week average, it actually undoes all of your hard work in that the average is brought up because of a huge spike on the Saturday or Sunday weekend. This is very common with people who might think that they have a really good week Monday to Friday, and then they just let loose on Saturday and then get back onto the diet on Monday and wonder why they never lose weight. Well, it's actually because their average is actually being brought up by the Saturday or Sunday amount. And visually, this is what it looks like. From Monday to Saturday in scenario 1, this person is eating 2,500 calories a day, but has a huge cheat day on the Sunday, and their average sits at 3,000. But in scenario 2, the person actually lets themselves eat 300 calories more per day from Monday to Sunday without the huge cheat day on the Sunday, and their average over the course of the week, of course, is the same, 2,800, and is actually less than the person who lets themselves go and tries to make up for it during the week. And this is the importance of making sure that you don't let yourself go and that you keep the average of the week in mind, and it's not just 1 or 2 days that can make a diet. It has to be a continual effort over the full 7-day week. So basically, to summarize, the main tips are: track your macros with MyFitnessPal or some sort of similar app, ensure that your protein intake remains high to keep you satiated and to build muscle. Resistance train 2 to 3 times per week. Ensure that your cardiovascular exercise to target fat loss is in that low to moderate intensity to burn the most fat. Track your weight progress, but don't be scared about fluctuations day to day. The average trend is the most important. And finally, be wary of cheat days. Thank you so much for watching, and if you're interested in more videos like this one, please consider subscribing, where I delve into the most up-to-date literature and research behind the fitness industry in order to help you guys smash your goals with the backing of true science. I'll see you in my next video, and thank you for the support.